Thanks for having me on HMV to go through some vinyl that I like and has meant things to me, or I've got a few questions here that have been sent. What's the record that made me want to be in a band? Well, it's this one. The Faces, a nod's as good as a wink to a blind horse. About 1971, produced by Glyn Johns. It's Rod Stewart, it's Ronnie Wood, Ronnie Lane. Some incredible guitar playing, great band feel to it. Beautiful track on here called Debris by Ronnie Lane, which I adore. Made me feel as a kid that someone was writing lyrics about where I lived. It starts off, I left you on a debris at a Sunday morning market. And I used to go to Sunday morning markets with my dad and mum. But it's a great album for any time of the day. Stay With Me was the killer track on here, and sort of changed my life really. I remember miming to this a lot as a kid with the tennis racket in front of the mirror. What is the record I play the most? Well, it's Bowie's The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars, and we all know this album. I first saw Bowie do Starman on Top of the Pops in 73, and it just changed my life. I just wanted to go to that planet that he'd come from. And this is a kind of concept album about that character, Ziggy Stardust. You all know it, I'm sure. Famously taken in a street in London where there is now a plaque here that says Ziggy Stardust was here. And I actually unveiled that plaque a few years ago now and put that up. It's got great tracks on there: Suffragette City, Rock and Roll Suicide, Lady Stardust. Yeah, there's a theme. And I think he set the benchmark for wanting to dress up and be theatrical. And that was all part of music. Music was about show, and it wasn't about shoegazing. The record that makes me feel good is Humble Pie's Rockin' the Fillmore. It's a live album. Steve Marriott left the Faces. Not the Faces, but the Small Faces, sorry. It was the same band. It turned into the Faces. He went off and he formed this band Humble Pie with Peter Frampton, who also made an incredible live album. We know Frampton Comes Alive. This is a band that swings, and not many rock bands swing. And Stevie had this great soulful R&B voice, really high falsetto, songs like I Don't Need No Doctor, Hallelujah, I Love Her So, Rolling Stone, I Walk on Gilded Splinters, Dr. John's song. Highly recommend this record, double album, and obviously, gatefold sleeves are really important. You can analyze all those photographs forever if you're a kid and wanting to play guitar in a band. The record I turn to when I'm feeling down is, well, I've got a couple here. So Fairport Convention, Legion Leaf, the great Richard Thompson on here with Sandy Denny. A beautiful sort of the first English folk album, really, or British folk album, electric folk album, I mean. It has a lot of that Englishness about it, that, old songs that they found from 100 years before the post-industrial revolution songs, and electrified them. And there's some jigs and reels on here, but also some beautiful, heartfelt ballads from Sandy Denny. It's one of the most played records in my collection. But also Lonnie Liston Smith, a bit of jazz funk, more jazz than funk maybe. Great soul on this. This is from the 70s. Again, all my records are from the 70s usually, because that's when I became inspired by music in the 70s, growing up as a teenager. And Lonnie Liston Smith's Loveland is well worth digging out or buying or streaming or whatever not streaming, buying and listening to on vinyl, of course. That's how it was meant to be put together. And that's another important thing to say about vinyl. Vinyls, if it's a one record, they tend to be, it's a 2-act piece. You know, it was really, you'd think a lot about what's the last track on the album, what's the last track on side 1, what's the first track on side 2. You couldn't skip tracks. You know, it was a concept in itself. 20 minutes each side, while you sat down and listened and perused the artwork that it was at least 12 inches square. Favorite covers. So that I picked 2 again. And the first one is Roxy Music's first album, which has this incredible 50s Americana type photograph on the front. They were an English band, obviously, but dabbled in that sort of 50s pop culture of America. And it was Nicholas DeVille who put the artwork together. Says it all here: cover concept Brian Ferry, photography by Carl Stoker, artwork by CCS, clothes, makeup and hair Anthony Price, that's the Anthony Price clothes designer, and Carrie Ann's hair by Smile. It was run by a guy called Keith I used to know, and it's beautiful. But this is exquisite, of course, with the real zip in it. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. It's not been unzipped for decades. It's slightly falling apart. This is an old copy of Rolling Stone's Sticky Fingers with the Andy Warhol cover. We don't quite know if that's Mick Jagger. I don't think it is Mick Jagger's jeans. But it sort of says it all about rock and roll and sex and where they were at in those days, simpler times. So, Sticky Fingers. One of the questions says, what's my favourite album title? So I have to admit to being a bit of a proggy at times. And Yes came into my life early on as well. And I don't think you can be none more proggy than Tales from Topographic Oceans, with the great Roger Dean doing the artwork. See the gatefold sleeve there. He created these landscapes for Yes and various other acts like Gentle Giant, and he was the sort of master of prog landscape, really. But I think there are 2 albums in here and basically 4 songs. So you get more title for your money than you get song. What's the last vinyl I bought? Well, I really love St. Vincent, and I was waiting for this to come. And her Daddy's at Home album, I think, is exquisite. It has a great 70s sensibility to it. It's autobiographical. It's about her dad and her, and I think she got a lot of the inspiration from the records that were in his collection that she got handed. And I think she's a fantastic artist. There's a lot of great female artists coming out now, coming out of America, like Phoebe Bridgers, Sharon Van Etten, who I really like, who I also bought recently. But I want to mention one British artist, female artist, that I think is fantastic, and that's the Anchoress. And she has just had an album out called The Art of Losing, which is sort of about grief, and it's beautifully packaged, and it's a wonderful album. I played that a lot. What's my greatest record of all time? I'm not the only one to say this, but it has to be Sgt. Pepper's and the Beatles, because I love the Beatles and I'm still a fanboy, massive fanboy, and I think this is one of the greatest records of all time. She's Leaving Home is my favourite on here for some reason. It's not any of the necessary classics like A Day in the Life, but that has to be in everybody's collection. I have a lot of these, including the Giles Martin remix. And finally, the album to buy is this album, which is called INSOLO, and it's by me. And it comes out July the 16th. And I'm very proud of it. Thank you. See you later.